What happens when you sleep at night? The substance that builds up during the day that signals to your brain that you're awake, called adenosine, it builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up. You sleep, your body clears it all out. Well, then you start fresh the next day. It builds up, builds up, builds up. So you got to keep clearing out the adenosine. If you don't get enough sleep, it keeps building up, clogs up, messes up, gums up the works. Think of it that way. All of the reactive oxygen species we talked about that induce things like Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, problems like that, all of that gets detoxed at night. That's when you have your mitophagy, your autophagy, your cleanup systems, everything gets taken care of. It only happens when you're asleep. The neuroplasticity happens and memories are cemented. So this is when learning really takes place at night when you're asleep. This is why it's so important for school-age kids to get a good night's sleep. One of the things about life today that drives me crazy are all these activities that have kids that are like 8 or 9 years old out playing softball or soccer till 9 or 10 at night, when we know that all of the brain development happens at sleep and they need like 10 or 11 hours. And then the cells maintain themselves. Your mitochondria health improves. All of this is managed by your levels of melatonin and levels of light. So shift work, one of the worst things in the world, reduces lifespan, clearly shown. Every cell in your body has a clock that's managed by the big clock cells in the brain, managed by melatonin and UVB and UVA rays. So deep sleep and REM sleep, hugely important. Levels of REM sleep, amount of REM sleep, very highly correlated to death rates. So if you don't sleep well, your likelihood of dying sooner and worse is higher. Most human adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. A lot of people will tell you they only need 3 hours of sleep. They're wrong. You need about 7 to 9 hours. Could there be outliers on that curve? Maybe, but it takes a certain amount of time to clear out the adenosine and do all this detox process and neuroplasticity. I mean, the genes have to be turned on. They have to form certain proteins. The proteins have to become active. They have to do their thing. So this doesn't happen like this. So 3 hours of sleep is not enough. And then changing your circadian rhythm constantly is horrible for people, but it is what it is for a lot of people in this country. So how do you get good sleep? So first of all, don't have sleep apnea. If you have sleep apnea, get it managed. If you snore or you think you have sleep apnea or you just want to go get a sleep study, you got to do it. And CPAPs are annoying, but they are life-saving. So first, don't have sleep apnea. Second, big trick to sleep is the core body temperature. Your body temperature has to drop to get good deep sleep by a couple of degrees. So 65 degrees in the room is optimal if you can do it. Some people will think that if you take an ice bath right before bed, you're cooling yourself off. But actually what you're doing is you're triggering to the body to increase the temperature of the core. It's a stress response, the opposite of what happens with hot. So if you get in a sauna, your core temperature goes down because your body's responding to the external environment. So avoid ice baths or cold showers before bed because that's really inducing an increase in your core body temperature. So you want to sleep 65 degrees or less. You don't want to have sleep apnea. You want to have a solid routine that follows a circadian rhythm, if at all possible. You want a dark room. Ideally, no light, because even a tiny little light will mess up your melatonin patterns. If you need light, like if you have to get up to go to the bathroom, try to have red lights or amber lights because they don't induce melatonin as much as blue light or bright lights. Avoid screens at night if you can. Make sure if you have a TV in the room, make sure that all the settings are on warm and they're low blue light settings. And you can do that in the settings feature under picture on most modern TVs. You want to avoid alcohol within a few hours of sleep if you can. Now, most people think that alcohol helps them fall asleep, which it does, but mostly because it's helping you sort of pass out. What happens with alcohol is it fragments your sleep and you actually reduce your rapid eye movement sleep, which we know is linked to all-cause mortality. So, you know, a glass or two of wine every day is fine per the Mediterranean diet, right? But you just don't want to have it too close to bedtime. So those are just some tricks to trying to get good sleep. Hugely important for health.